The Philippine economy is rich in agriculture. Agriculture has been existing even during pre-colonial time, considering rice is an Asian staple food along with other crops. But this only brought economic and social problems concerning the agrarian structure as well as land tenancy. During the American colonization in the Philippines, the colonial government tried to solve the agrarian problem by purchasing the so-called friar lands from religious corporations and sell it to the tenants. But the land ended up with Filipino landlords and the agrarian problem became worse. Some of the tenants wanted to get back their land and claimed that the lands they were tilling were owned by their ancestors before it was claimed by the landlords with land titles. The Tayug Uprising in Pangasinan in 1931 as well as Sakdalista Uprising in 1935 prompted the government to have an action about the agrarian problem. One of the program of President Manuel L. Quezon for the Commonwealth government was to espouse social justice to stop agrarian unrest in Central Luzon and reduce the poverty of farmers. It was in line with the provision of Article 2, Section 5 of the 1935 Constitution, which states that the promotion of social justice to ensure the well-being and economic security of all people should be the concern of state. These are the significant legislation enacted during the American period. The Philippine Bill of 1902, which set the ceilings on the hectareage of private individuals and corporates may acquire. 16 hectares for private individuals and 1,024 hectares for corporations. Land Registration Act of 1902. Article number 496 provides a comprehensive registration of land titles under the torrent system. Public Land Act of 1903, an act that introduced the homestead system in the Philippines. Tenancy Act of 1933, Article number 4054 and 4113, that regulates the relationship between landowners and tenants. During the Commonwealth era, President Quezon enacted land reform laws. On November 13, 1936, the Commonwealth Article number 178, amending the Rice Tenancy Article number 4045 of the 1933 that provides certain controls in the landlord-tenant relationship with regard to rice lands. He also created the National Rice and Corn Corporation in 1936 to control the prices of rice and corns that will benefit the farmers and consumers. In 1939, the Rural Program Administration, an office that was created to facilitate the sale or lease of the haciendas to the tenants. However, many of the social justice programs of the Commonwealth government were not enforced. Legislation of these planned programs was thwarted by the landowning legislators in the Commonwealth National Assembly who would be affected if these laws would be passed.
Hi guys, I'm Dwayne. Today we'll talk about the agrarian reform laws from Rojas administration up to Magsaysay.
Agrarian problems remained even after Philippine independence was declared in 1946. This became a full-blown rebellion led by the Hukbong Bayan Laban sa Hapon or Hukbalahap, who later changed their name to Hukbong Magpapalaya ng Bayan or People's Liberation Army. Rojas administration, 1946 to 1948. During the Rojas administration, President Manuel Rojas established the Republic Act No. 34. Republic Act No. 34 meant 70 to 30 sharing arrangements between the landlord and the tenants. President Manuel Rojas also established the Republic Act No. 55, which protected and secured the tenants from arbitrary ejection from the land that they are cultivating. Administration, 1948 to 1953. On October 30, 1950, President Elpidio Quirino issued Executive Order No. 355. This replaced the National Land Settlement Administration with the Land Settlement Development Corporation or LADESCO. LADESCO then took over two agrarian offices, the Agricultural Machinery Equipment Corporation and the Rice and Corn Production Administration. LADESCO's prime purposes were to acquire and cultivate agricultural lands, to afford opportunity to own farms to tenant farmers and small farmers from congested areas, and to encourage migration to sparsely populated regions and facilitate the amalgamation of the people in different sections of the Philippines. Magsaysay Administration, 1953 to 1957. In 1954, President Ramon Magsaysay signed the Republic Act No. 1199 or the Agriculture Tenancy Act of 1954. This act governed the tenant and landowner relationship and created the Court of Agrarian Relations. President Ramon Magsaysay also signed the Republic Act No. 1400 or the Land Reform Act of 1955. This created the Land Tenure Administration or LTA. The LTA handled the acquisition and distribution of tenanted lands. He also signed the Republic Act No. 821 or the creation of Agricultural Credit Cooperative Financing Administration. This created an agricultural bank that provided low-interest loans to small farmers and share tenants.
Agrarian reforms under President Diosdado Macapagal's presidential term. Under President Diosdado Macapagal's term, his efforts to advance agrarian reform was shown to Republic Act No. 3844 and Agricultural Land Reform Code, which abolished tenancy and established a leasehold system in which farmers paid fixed rentals to landlords rather than a percentage of harvest. It also set a retention limit of 75 hectares for landowners. Invested rights of preemption and redemption for tenant farmers. Put in place an administrative machinery for implementation. Institutionalized a judicial system for agrarian cases. And incorporated extension, marketing, and supervised credit system of services for farmer beneficiaries. This law was hailed as one that would emancipate Filipino farmers from the bondage of tenancy. It also became the precursor of the agrarian reform programs of the succeeding administration. President Ferdinand Marcos's agrarian reforms during his presidential term. Following the imposition of martial law in 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos declared the entire country a land reform area through Presidential Decree No. 2, issued on September 26, 1972. Almost a year ago, Marcos also signed Republic Act No. 6389 or the Code of Agrarian Reform, which created the Department of Agrarian Reform, or also known as DAR. The DAR began efforts to implement land reforms in the Philippines with full support from the government. This independent body was formed to replace the existing land authority. The Department of Agrarian Reform was renamed the Ministry of Agrarian Reform in 1978 when the government adopted the parliamentary system. In October 1972, President Marcos signed Presidential Decree No. 27, which provided for tenanted lands devoted to rice and corn to pass ownership to the tenants, and lowered the ceiling for land holding to 7 hectares. The law stipulated that shared tenants who worked on a land holding of over 7 hectares could purchase the land they tilled, while shared tenants on land less than 7 hectares would become leaseholders. Marcos's agrarian reform program also included credit support, infrastructure, and legal assistance for farmers.
Hi guys, I'm Laika and I will be discussing President Corazon Aquino and President B. Ramos' agrarian reform laws. President Cory made agrarian reform as a centerpiece of her government. In her administration, she ratified the Constitution under Section 21, Article 2 that the state shall promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. And on June 10, 1988, she signed Republic Act No. 6657 known as Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law or CARL that became effective on June 15, 1988. Here are some of the other laws on agrarian reformation of former President Cory Aquino. Executive Order No. 228, it was signed July 16, 1987, declaring full ownership to qualified farmer beneficiaries covered by Presidential Decree No. 27. Executive Order No. 229, it was signed July 22, 1987, providing mechanism for the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or CARP. Proclamation No. 131, it was signed July 22, 1987, instituted that CARP as a major program of the government. And last, Executive Order No. 129A, it was signed July 26, 1987, streamlined and expanded the power and operations of the DAR. Let us now go to President Fidel B. Ramos' administration. When he formally took over in 1992, his administration came to face-to-face with public who have lost confidence in the agrarian reform program. his administration committed to the vision, fairer, faster, and more meaningful implementation of the Agrarian Reform Program. President Fidel B. Ramos enacted the following agrarian reform laws. Republic Act No. 7881 amended certain provisions of RA 6657 and exempted fish buns and prawns from coverage of carp. Republic Act No. 7905 strengthened the implementation of the carp. Executive Order No. 363 limits the type of lands that may be converted by setting conditions under which specific categories of agricultural lands are either absolutely non-negotiable for conversion or highly restricted for conversion. Republic Act No. 8435 Agricultural and Fisheries Modernization Act or AFMA. Republic Act 8532 Agrarian Reform Fund Bill provided an additional 50 billion pesos for carp and extended its implementation for another 10 years.
I am Hannah Nadarin. I will tackle the history of agrarian reform from 1998 to 2016. Although former President Estrada had a short term, he enacted Executive Order No. 151, which had forged alliances among countries implementing AR through the International Conference on Agrarian Reform and Rural Development. He also ordered the AR under Magkasaka program with the objectives as to encourage investors to bring investments into the countryside and enhance the income of the farmers through joint venture schemes and contract growing schemes. And on September 27 of 2004, former President Arroyo signed the Executive Order No. 364, wherein the Department of Agrarian Reform was renamed to Department of Land Reform, and this also broadened the scope of the department, making it responsible for all land reform in the country. On August 23 of 2005, the Executive Order No. 456 was signed to rename the Department of Land Reform as Department of Agrarian Reform. Also, CARPER was signed into law on August 7 of 2009, which was set to expire on June 30 of 2014. However, the program of distributing lands to farmer beneficiaries continued even after June of 2014. Lastly, under the government of President Aquino, carp performance is said to be the worst since 1988, in which the year carp took effect because of an achievement rate of only 5% vis-a-vis target. The Department of Agriculture prioritized the agribusiness sector, leaving DAR to provide service to farmers who need support for agricultural production, while government pursues an aggressive investment policy, especially in food and biofuel production, which is not in harmony with the goals of CARPER.